Deep in a quiet English valley, snow had fallen gently overnight. The rooftops were dusted in white, smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and a soft gray light seeped through frosted windows. Inside one of these small houses, a narrow, low-ceilinged cottage warmed by a modest radiator, an elderly man stirred from slumber. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the muted light that fell across the wooden floorboards. Outside, the world seemed muffled, quieted by the blanket of snow, and inside the man felt the comforting hush, the cozy solitude of his familiar surroundings. He rose carefully, stretching slowly as his feet met the cool, carpeted floor. There was a rhythmic hum to his movements, a daily ritual repeated for decades, yet each morning felt slightly different. The air was crisp, carrying a delicate scent of frost and smoke that seeped in through the small gaps in the old wooden windows. He made his way across the room, bare feet brushing over the faded rug, and reached the old kettle perched on the stove. Lighting the small gas burner, he listened to the soft hiss as water began to boil, knowing that soon the comforting aroma of freshly brewed tea would fill the air. While waiting, he opened the curtains, peering out at the snow-covered street. Footprints from neighbors or passers-by traced winding patterns through the white expanse. The houses across the way were still quiet, windows half frosted, their own inhabitants likely wrapped in blankets, resisting the early chill. The man smiled faintly, appreciating the peaceful solitude that only snowy mornings could bring, the quiet introspection before the bustle of daily life began. He noticed the sky, pale and streaked with the first hints of dawn, and allowed himself a long, slow breath. Each inhale seemed to fill him with calm, each exhale letting go of residual sleepiness, tension, and yesterday's lingering thoughts. The kettle finished boiling, and he poured the water over a small tea bag, letting it steep. He watched as the amber liquid darkened, steam curling and rising, soft tendrils dissolving into the frosty morning air. He cradled the warm cup between his hands, feeling the gentle heat seep into his cold fingers. Sipping slowly, he let the warmth travel through his chest, settling into his core, melting away the last of the morning chill. The tea was strong, a blend that carried the faint taste of roasted leaves, a hint of sweetness lingering at the edges of the mouth. It was a small comfort, simple and repetitive, yet infinitely soothing. He dressed next, pulling on thick woolen socks, sturdy trousers, and a worn cardigan. The layers absorbed the chill, shielding him from the morning cold that seeped into the cottage from the drafty windows. Each movement was deliberate, careful, almost meditative. He paused occasionally, placing a hand on the window sill, gazing out at the snow-laden trees that lined the street. A few birds hopped among the branches, tiny pinpricks of life in a vast expanse of white. He smiled at their persistence, their quiet determination to find food, shelter, and warmth despite the biting cold. Breakfast followed in the kitchen, the modest meal of porridge, buttered toast, and a small plate of fruit. Each bite was deliberate, chewed slowly, savored. There was no rush. The snow outside continued its silent fall, soft flakes drifting down like whispers from the sky. Occasionally, a neighbor's footsteps crunched faintly against the icy path outside, reminding him that the world beyond his cottage still moved, still carried on, despite the serenity that enveloped him indoors. Yet here in this cocoon of warmth, Everything was slowed, deliberate, and full of quiet, subtle pleasures. After finishing, he cleaned the small dishes, the soft clinking against the sink a comforting accompaniment to the distant, muffled silence outside. He prepared for the day ahead, donning a heavy wool coat, a scarf, and thick gloves. Before stepping out, he paused for a final glance at the kettle, the morning sun catching on the rising steam. It was a small ritual acknowledging warmth before braving the chill. The snow outside seemed deeper now, untouched by footsteps, waiting for him to carve his path through it, a blank canvas of white stretching across the valley. He opened the door slowly, feeling the crisp, biting air immediately. Each inhale carried the scent of snow, earth, and wood smoke from distant chimneys. The cold stung briefly, sharp yet invigorating, and he let it fill his lungs fully before taking his first cautious steps outside. His boots sank slightly into the soft snow, leaving imprints that would soon be joined by his own footprints along the narrow, winding street. Each step was deliberate, mindful, a rhythmic crunch beneath his feet that blended with the muffled hush of the snowy morning. The world was quiet, peaceful, and still, yet alive with subtle, gentle motion. He paused by the path, noting the distant smoke rising from the bakery, the faint aroma of fresh bread carried lightly on the air. A small smile played on his lips. Even in such simple routines, the world offered small comforts, reminders of warmth, sustenance, and life moving forward in gentle, measured rhythms. He inhaled deeply, savoring the scent, feeling it fill him with a quiet, gentle energy. Each breath anchored him to the present, letting him feel both the calm of the morning and the anticipation of the day ahead. The snow continued to fall softly, wrapping the valley in quietude, a blanket of calm that promised safety, peace, and rest later in the day. The elderly man stepped fully into the crisp morning air, feeling the bite of the winter chill on his cheeks and nose. His breath formed tiny clouds that lingered briefly before dissolving into the frosty air. The snow crunched under his boots as he made his way to the small woodpile beside his cottage. Each log was stacked carefully, a pyramid of warmth waiting to be released. He selected the thickest, driest pieces first, running his fingers along the rough bark, feeling the promise of heat within. Returning indoors, he placed the logs in the old cast-iron stove. The flue creaked slightly as he opened it, revealing the hollow chamber ready to be filled. He struck a match, the flame tiny and flickering, and held it to the kindling. Slowly, the fire caught. The soft crackle of burning wood filled the room, a comforting, rhythmic sound that seemed to push the cold outward, retreating into the shadows beyond the door and windows. The warmth began to spread gradually, creeping along the floorboards, curling into the corners, wrapping the man in a gentle embrace. He sat in his favorite armchair, a well-worn seat upholstered in faded plaid, the chair facing the stove directly. Pulling a thick wool blanket over his knees, he rested his hands near the fire, letting the heat soak into his fingers and wrists. Each exhale released a small plume of mist that quickly vanished, and he felt the chill of the morning fade into a soft, manageable coolness. There was a meditative quality to this simple act, to the quiet observation of flames dancing and shifting. The smoke spiraled upward, reflecting the orange glow, and he allowed himself to sink into the peaceful rhythm of the fire, feeling tension from the night dissolve. From time to time, he would lift his cup of tea, still steaming from the morning, and sip slowly. The warmth from the liquid combined with the fire's heat, permeating his body, encouraging calm, steady breaths. He marveled at the simplicity of it all, the dance of the flames, the aroma of burning wood, the faint hiss of melting snow dripping off the roof outside. Even as the cold nipped at the edges of the room, he felt prepared, wrapped in his layers, armed with blankets, heat, and the small rituals that had carried him through countless winters. Once sufficiently warmed, he prepared to step outside for his short journey along the snowy lane to the small bakery in the village. The scarf around his neck was wound snugly, gloves pulled tight, and boots laced firmly. Each step into the snow was deliberate, mindful of both the cold and the need to maintain balance on the uneven, icy path. He paused at the door, inhaling the crisp, clean air, letting it fill his lungs fully, invigorating yet gentle. The fire's warmth lingered on his fingers and face, a small shield against the morning frost. As he walked, he noticed the snow-laden branches bowing slightly under the weight of the frost. Each step was accompanied by a soft crunch, a subtle music of winter that echoed faintly along the quiet street. Occasionally, a gust of wind swept down the lane, stinging his cheeks and nose, prompting him to hunch slightly, pulling his scarf closer. He considered it a small dance with the season, a daily test of patience and endurance, and one he met with quiet determination. The cold, while sharp and persistent, was tempered by the preparation of layers, fire-heated clothing, and mindful packing. Reaching the bakery, the man was greeted by the comforting smell of fresh bread and pastries. The warmth inside enveloped him immediately, soft and welcoming, a stark contrast to the biting air outside. He picked up a small loaf, its crust crisp and golden, and a few scones dusted with sugar. The simple act of holding these baked goods, feeling their warmth, was a reward for enduring the brief struggle through the cold. In a sense, it was a small triumph, a cozy, tactile acknowledgement that preparation and patience could overcome the harshness of winter. Walking back home, the man paused occasionally to admire the play of light on the snow, the way the sun reflected faintly off frozen branches, turning the forested edges of the lane into a sparkling tunnel. He moved carefully, mindful of the thin ice beneath the snow, yet he allowed his eyes to linger on the beauty around him. Each inhalation carried both the cold sting and the sharp scent of pine and frost, an invigorating combination that reminded him of nature's quiet resilience. The snow, which could feel oppressive, instead became a gentle companion, demanding mindfulness, presence, and a kind of quiet joy in the struggle. Back at the cottage, he immediately returned to the stove, adding more logs to keep the fire burning steadily. The room filled with the rich scent of burning wood, the comforting crackles punctuating the quiet afternoon. He removed his gloves and scarf, allowing his body to absorb the fire's warmth fully. Sitting once more in his armchair, he let himself relax, fingers resting on the blanket, eyes half closed, mind wandering gently through memories and the small, sibilant noises of snow shifting outside. The fire, steady and warm, provided a rhythm that encouraged calm, stillness, and a gentle easing toward rest. He spent the next hour in this way, alternating between small sips of tea, observing the fire and occasionally glancing out at the snowy world beyond. Each glance reminded him of the quiet battles against winter, cold mornings, frosty lanes, the need for warmth, preparation, and attention. Yet these struggles were gentle, tempered by routine, by preparation, and by the knowledge that comfort could be summoned with a few simple rituals. A fire, warm clothing, a hot drink, and the patience to move slowly and mindfully. Finally, as the afternoon drew on and the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the snow, he felt the gentle pull toward rest. The fire was steady, the tea now finished, and the world outside muffled by snow and quiet. He wrapped the blanket further around himself, allowing the residual warmth of the fire to seep deep into his body. His breathing slowed, steady and rhythmic, mirroring the soft pulse of the flames. The cold of the morning, the small struggles against ice and frost, the brief gusts of wind, and the effort of walking through snow all felt distant now, replaced by the comforting embrace of warmth, rhythm, and the gentle quiet of home. As the afternoon faded, the elderly man began preparing for his evening meal. The snow outside continued to fall in delicate flakes, blanketing the valley in quiet white. Inside the cottage, the soft hum of the radiator mingled with the crackle of the fire, creating a steady, comforting background. He pulled out a small saucepan, the familiar metal cool and reassuring under his fingers, and began to heat water for a simple stew. Root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, and parsnips were peeled and chopped with deliberate care, each movement methodical and unhurried. The chopping sounded soft against the wooden cutting board, a gentle rhythm echoing through the quiet kitchen. Once the vegetables were ready, he added them to the simmering water along with a small handful of herbs, the aroma rising immediately, warm and earthy, filling the small space with a sense of comfort. The fire's glow reflected softly off the pots and pans, and he paused for a moment to inhale the scent, letting it settle in his chest like a soft embrace. Steam rose from the pot, curling lazily toward the ceiling, carrying hints of rosemary and thyme. He stirred slowly, listening to the bubbling, letting his mind drift gently, free from thought, anchored only by the small, meditative tasks of cooking. Dinner was a quiet affair. He set a small wooden tray near the fire, the flickering flames illuminating the modest meal. Each bite of the warm stew was savored, the flavors simple yet satisfying. Outside, the snow pressed against the windows, muffling the distant sounds of the world beyond, and inside the man felt cocooned, completely at ease. Between bites, he sipped tea, the warmth seeping into his chest, spreading to his hands, and he allowed himself to simply exist in the gentle comfort of the room. The fire crackled steadily, its amber glow casting long, soft shadows across the walls. After finishing, he cleaned the small dishes and utensils, placing each carefully in the sink. The sound of running water was soft, almost hypnotic, blending with the gentle hiss of the fire. He returned to his chair by the stove, pulling the thick wool blanket snugly over his knees. The warmth radiated outward, soaking into his clothing, easing the last remnants of chill from the day. His hands rested near the fire, fingertips grazing the soft folds of the blanket. Each breath was deliberate, slow, and rhythmic, matching the gentle pulse of the flames. As the evening wore on, he allowed his mind to wander, recalling small, pleasant memories. The first snowfall of a long ago winter, a simple cup of cocoa after trudging through fresh snow, the laughter of neighbors at the corner shop. These were small, comforting echoes of life. Each memory was like a gentle breeze, brushing softly across his consciousness, leaving warmth and calm in its wake. He felt no rush, no urgency. The snow outside continued its quiet descent, and inside he felt protected, serene, and deeply at ease. Before heading to bed, he performed a small, habitual ritual. He refilled the kettle for the night, making sure hot water would be ready for tea in the morning. He checked the stove, adding one final log to maintain a slow, steady fire through the night. The fire crackled and hissed, its warmth a constant companion. He settled back in his chair for a moment longer, letting the heat reach his toes and fingertips fully. The room was quiet except for the soft murmur of the flames and the occasional pop of wood catching fire. It was a melody of warmth and calm, perfectly suited for slowing the mind and easing into rest. Finally, as twilight deepened into night, he stood, stretched slowly, and made his way to the bedroom. The snow outside had created a soft, pristine world, the streetlights casting gentle halos on the white drifts. Inside, his bedroom was modest, yet warm and inviting. Thick curtains kept out the chill, and his bed, layered with heavy blankets, awaited. He removed his slippers, stepped into the thick rug beside the bed, and let himself pause. The warmth of the fire lingered in his clothing, still a soft presence in the room, while the muted white glow of the snowy landscape outside lent a gentle light through the window. Sliding beneath the blankets, he allowed his body to sink fully into the soft mattress. The weight of the wool over him was grounding, comforting, and protective. He lay on his back, eyes tracing the soft shadows on the ceiling cast by the flickering light of the fireplace below. Each breath was long, slow, and deliberate. The subtle warmth from the fire, the comforting smells of the cottage, and the gentle hush of snow outside combined to create a cocoon of peace. He felt the day's minor efforts, the walks in the snow, the stirring of vegetables, the tending of the fire melt away, leaving only quiet stillness. As his eyelids grew heavier, the crackle of the fire seemed to synchronize with the slow rhythm of his heartbeat. The world, both inside and outside the cottage, held a gentle hush. Memories and small images from the day mingled with the quiet pulse of warmth, creating a space entirely safe, serene, and ready for sleep. His breathing deepened, and a faint smile crossed his lips, a quiet acknowledgement of the comfort, warmth, and routine that had carried him through yet another winter day. Wrapped in blankets, warmed by the fire and soothed by the gentle hush of the snowy night, he finally allowed his mind to drift completely. The day's tasks, the cold walks, the small challenges, the quiet triumphs, all blended into the warmth of the evening. And in that perfect stillness, with the gentle pulse of the fire and the muffled snow outside, he surrendered fully to rest, the gentle pull of sleep guiding him into a deep, restorative slumber. The night deepened over the quiet valley, blanketing the cottages and the forested hills in soft darkness. The snow, still gently falling, absorbed every sound, creating a muted world where even footsteps seemed to vanish into the stillness. Inside his small English cottage, the elderly man lay tucked under thick blankets, the residual warmth from the fire lingering softly in the room. The glow of the last embers cast a gentle, flickering light across the walls, painting moving shadows that stretched and contracted like slow, deliberate breaths. He adjusted his pillow slightly, resting his head in just the right position, feeling the comforting weight of the blanket settle around him. The room smelled faintly of wood smoke and dried herbs, a scent that had become familiar, soothing, and profoundly grounding over countless winters. Outside, the snowy landscape reflected a pale, silvered moonlight that filtered through the frosted window panes, giving the night a delicate, magical quality. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the subtle, rhythmic hiss of the dying fire and the soft whisper of the wind against the walls, each sound a gentle lullaby. Memories of the day drifted into his mind, not as urgent thoughts but as soft, fleeting images. The slow walk to the bakery, the crunch of snow under his boots, the warm aroma of bread mingling with the cold air, each detail repeated in a soothing rhythm. He thought of the fire's crackle, the glow of the evening meal, and the delicate scent of the herbs steeping in the stew. These recollections were comforting, like familiar notes in a quiet, repeating melody, and they allowed him to let go of the outside world entirely. He shifted slightly, curling his fingers around the edges of the blanket, feeling its thick weave against his skin. The room seemed to contract, enclosing him in a protective, silent embrace. Outside, a lone bird fluttered briefly, landing on a snow-laden branch before settling into the quiet. Its movements were subtle, almost imperceptible, yet somehow reassuring, a reminder of the gentle persistence of life even in the coldest, quietest moments. The man smiled faintly in his mind, thinking of how even small, simple things could bring a profound sense of peace. The fire's warmth had seeped fully into the cottage, yet the coolness from the snow outside persisted softly, balancing the air. Each inhalation brought the crisp scent of frozen air into his lungs, and each exhale carried a relaxed heaviness. His breathing slowed naturally, unconsciously matching the flicker of light from the remaining embers. The world had been tamed into a calm, rhythmic pulse, steady and reliable, guiding him toward sleep without effort or insistence. He remembered the rituals of past winters, the way he had once laid logs with careful hands, arranged the fire for maximum warmth, and tended to the small details that made the cottage safe and cozy. Each act had been deliberate, a meditation on warmth, comfort, and patience. Even now, decades later, those motions and memories played across his mind like a gentle film, each frame soft, muted, and lulling. There was no rush, no urgency. The night was his companion, not a task to complete. As he let himself drift, he imagined the gentle sway of the snow-laden branches outside the window. They seemed to dance in slow motion, bending beneath the weight of frost, yet resilient. Tiny icicles caught faint moonlight, sparkling like delicate stars strewn across the landscape. He visualized these small, quiet scenes, allowing each to dissolve seamlessly into the next, forming a continuous stream of calm, harmonious images. The snow became a soft blanket over the world, protecting it, quieting it, and preparing it for rest, much as he now prepared himself. The warmth of the blankets wrapped around him like a cocoon. He felt the weight of the quilt, soft and pliant, providing gentle pressure that anchored his body comfortably. His mind floated lightly over the details of the day: meals eaten, walks taken, the fire's crackle, the gentle hush of the snowy night, and released them one by one, as if letting each thought drift away on a soft breeze. Only a serene, restful awareness remained, a quiet presence fully attuned to the moment. Outside, the night deepened further, stretching into velvety darkness. The village remained still, distant lights dimmed to a faint glow, and the occasional whisper of wind was absorbed by the thick layer of snow. Inside, the man's heartbeat slowed, harmonizing with the gentle rhythm of the world around him. Each inhalation drew in warmth and calm. Each exhalation released tension, lingering cold and residual thought. He felt a subtle, comforting weight settle in his chest, a tangible sensation of serenity, of readiness to let go completely. He imagined the fire, now quieting to embers, sending soft, residual warmth through the cottage. The faint orange glow flickered across the walls, gentle and intermittent like a heartbeat mirrored in light. The man focused on this light for a few moments, letting it anchor him in the present. Each flicker became a pulse guiding him, steady, predictable, and soothing. His eyelids grew heavier, the gentle warmth of the blankets and the soft hush of the night encouraging a deepening sense of rest. Tiny details occupied his mind now, soft and tender. The distant murmur of the stream behind the cottage, the occasional whisper of wind through the trees, the way the snow pressed lightly against the window, all were small, comforting companions. He noticed each sound not as a distraction but as a gentle rhythm, a lullaby from the winter night itself. The familiar scent of the fire and herbs remained in the air, subtle and grounding, wrapping around him like a tender, invisible shawl. With each passing moment, the man felt the day's minor struggles: the cold walk, the careful tending of fire and meal, the effort to navigate snow-laden paths drift away. They became distant echoes, like a soft tide receding from the shore. What remained was calm, warmth, light, and the gentle hush of a quiet, snow-filled valley. He surrendered fully to this stillness, allowing it to seep into every muscle, every thought, every breath. The room and the world outside seemed to blend together. The snow, the shadows, the remaining firelight, and the warmth of the blankets formed a cocoon that stretched from ceiling to floor, from window pane to hearth. He felt enveloped, protected, and completely at ease. Each breath carried the quiet hush of winter, each exhale a release into comfort and safety. His mind, once active with daily tasks, now floated lightly in a gentle current of peace. Finally, as the night pressed softly around the cottage, he allowed the last thread of wakefulness to dissolve. His breathing deepened, slow and steady. Thoughts had faded to whispers, shadows of sound and warmth merging into one continuous, unbroken sense of serenity. The fire's last embers pulsed in the background, harmonizing perfectly with the rhythmic pattern of his chest. The snow outside glimmered faintly under the moonlight, still and protective. And with the world hushed, wrapped in warmth and quiet, the elderly man drifted completely, gently, deeply into sleep. His body sank fully into the mattress, his mind surrendered to rest, and the valley outside cradled him in a blanket of frost and peace. The room smelled faintly of smoke and herbs, the fire's warmth lingered, and the soft hush of the night guided him into dreams. Tonight this was enough. Calm, warmth, and quiet had carried him through the day and now into rest. The snow continued to fall softly outside, the embers glowed faintly, and the house held him in a cocoon of peace. Sleep had arrived, gentle and complete,